Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the code base now. So let's close any open files we have. And let's zoom into our project a little more. All right. So, first thing, let's start out with, let's just dive into this collections folder. So collections is exactly what it sounds like. It has a list of the it's got different collections contained in your application. So each folder inside of the collections folder is approximately, it contains all the code for that one collection, right? So just like how with pages, each page has its own folder. Well, it's the same with collections. So each collection is going to get its own folder. Now, when we open up that folder, there's two pieces in here. There's code and there's templates. It's pretty much exactly what they sound like. The code folder has got our JavaScript in it, and our templates folder has got our HTML templates in it. Now, take a deep breath for a second and look at this really carefully and recognize, yes, we are starting to have a lot of files and folders. This is an unfortunate reality of building any sort of well-architected program. You are going to have a lot of files and folders. It becomes nearly unmaintainable to have a flat folder structure with really large files. You will be hating life, and it will be very difficult to support and maintain your app. So you just have to start to learn to realize that, like, JavaScript files are still just JavaScript files where you can do the same stuff you've always been able to do. And HTML files are still HTML files where you can do the same stuff you've always been able to do, right? What matters is when they connect to each other is using like the template name, right? Or the names of the collections that are shared everywhere, right? That's where you create those connections in code, but ultimately your HTML files and your JavaScript files, that structure is really totally arbitrary. And so I'm giving you the structure that you should be using to not go insane. This is going to be the easiest way to maintain and support your application and keep everything nice and organized, right? This is me. I'm like telling you where to put your socks and your shirts and how to organize your closet, right? So if you're finding this to be overwhelming, which, some people do, for whatever reason, some people get really tripped up on having a lot of files and folders, even though, it's just like your documents folder, right? You got folders that have folders that have folders, but it's all just really files and folders. There's nothing crazy about it. So if you find this to be overwhelming, you should probably pause the video at this point and just commit this to memory. So you have a collections folder. Each folder inside of the collections represents one collection. Inside each collection, you have two folders. You have your code, which contains all your JavaScript files, and you have your templates. Whoops, didn't mean to open that. Then you have your templates. Now, within the code folder, there's two more folders. There's one called lib and one called server. We'll get into this later on, why there are these two different folder names and why they have to be named the way they do. Don't let it freak you out. It's really just, it's just a little bit of additional structure on top of where you're putting your files. So from here, let's start off by opening the cats collection file. So cats collection.js under the lib folder. And this file, this is where all of our collection magic happens. So it seems a little archaic and confusing. So to make it look even grosser, I've put tons of comments in here trying to explain everything that's going on. And so we'll just go ahead and take a walk through it right now. So the first thing you need to do is we need to create a cats collection. This looks a lot like how when we would create a Mongo collection, be new mongo.collection. Now you'll notice, though, we're using this thing called Orion collection. It's effectively the same thing. It's a Mongo collection, but with some extra features added on to it to make your guys' lives easier. So the syntax for this is usually pretty crazy right here. So hopefully the boilerplate can make it pretty easy to get started off, and it will fill out most of this stuff for you. So unlike a normal Mongo collection where you're used to just seeing this, right? Just one line of code. Now we have a second parameter. Whoa. There we go. Now we have a second parameter. Notice from here down to here. This second parameter is an object that we're passing into the Orion collection. What is that object? It is just the configuration settings for the admin panel. So let's go ahead and look at the admin panel. You'll notice here, now we have this tab called Cats in our admin panel. And if we click on that, we can actually see we can edit and see the various entries throughout the app. So they can even like create a cat. Oops. Although I am a little confused as to why we aren't seeing these cats appear. Yeah. Well, there's usually some sort of customization you have to do on this object right here to get the master control interface for the collection working in the admin panel. Don't stress it too much right now. We'll do a deeper dive into some of these features at a later time. So the boilerplate should be more than enough to be fine for right now, even if the admin panel isn't quite working correctly. So now let's scroll down a little bit, and here we are attaching the schema. So this should seem really familiar to you from the previous video. Just to reiterate, a schema is a blueprint for every document in a collection. A schema basically says each of the documents in this collection will have the following fields available to them, as well as rules applied onto those fields. So in this case, each cat has a title, and the title must be a string. So this should be clear by this point with the videos that you've been watching. So if this is unclear, you should talk to a fellow classmate, because I cannot illustrate how important this concept is of a schema. A schema is a blueprint with which we can spawn forth lots of documents that follow the structure of that blueprint. So you'll notice here by default I've given you a title, I've given you an image attribute, I've given you this sort of WYSIWYG text editor attribute for the body, and then we also have a created by, created at, and updated at field onto the document. So these attributes right here, where you see Orion.attribute, these are special custom attributes that will make your life easier. For example, it was quite difficult from a coding perspective to put an image upload spot on your schema, and then being able to have the user upload and have that work nice and seamlessly. So this should save you a lot of energy. Now I have put the optional true tag right here on this attribute because we need to get AWS fully integrated into our app before we can start uploading images. So I put optional true there so that you can create cats and stuff without having to fill out the image right away. Then we have this body tag, and you'll notice we're using this thing called Summer Note. That's where we're getting that WYSIWYG text editor that can do deep text editing. If you just want to have a normal string box for an input, that's fine. Just use string. But some of you may actually want to let the user have a little bit more fine-grained control over the style of whatever they're putting in. From here, we then have a created by field. So this is exactly what it sounds like. It just takes a snapshot of whichever user created the document. We have a created at field, which is a timestamp of when the document was created. And we have an updated at field, which is when a document was last changed. My suspicion is that you probably absolutely want created by and created at. It's usually very useful to be able to sort by the most recent documents that were created, and it's also very useful to know who created a certain document. You may not need the updated at field. You might not need to last know when the document was changed, or if you even have the kind of like some sort of logic where that matters, but there is a small overhead of writing this extra information when the document is every time it gets changed by doing this, because this one's the most expensive one, because these other two only happen, created by and created at only happen when it gets created the first time. But updated at gets called every single time you change the document. So if you definitely don't need this, I'd probably remove it, but if you're kind of in doubt or think you might want the feature at some point, it is pretty useful too, so maybe leave it on. So that is your call. And then, whoops, all right, so we've got some like kind of old code in here that I accidentally should have deleted. So, oh, you know what? Actually, we'll just leave that in there to demonstrate a concept later. So then if we scroll all the way to the bottom here, we have this, whatever this meteor.pagination thing is. Basically, we are just creating a object that will control all the items that we see in the list for our collection. So I would just be really surprised if you're going to want to touch this, you know. Maybe, you know, and that's kind of why it's here, but for the most part, I wouldn't mess with this at all. This is probably the functionality that you want. Well, no, I guess unless, you know, you might want to change it from like most recently created to oldest first. And if you want to do that, you could change this -1 to a 1. But we'll get more in detail into sorting probably at a later point. So while you're in this file, the only thing that you're probably going to want to change initially is this schema for whatever object you're making. So this would be a great time to you know what? Actually, just leave the default for now. Don't mess around with it and change it yet, because it'll be easier to demonstrate stuff if we have the same schema. But start thinking about this, or maybe generate a new collection where you can start playing around with the schema and start putting in some of the schemas you've already created. So that's what that file looks like. Now, if this file is confusing you, I wouldn't just barrel on ahead. I would probably make sure that you understand this, because this is definitely important. You know, we've got 3 parts here. We have this crazy initial config setting, which all you need to know is that it makes the admin panel work, and it's not something you probably want to. It's something you might spend time getting figured out, like right before you go to production, but you probably won't mess around with initially. We've got this schema, which you will change a lot. And then we've got this like cats.findList thing, which we probably don't want to touch. Now, let's go ahead and open our templates folder for the cats. So open the templates folder on your WebStorm, and you'll notice there's several different HTML templates in here. We have cat in find list, find cats, find one cat, insert cat, update cat. You might notice that these sound an awful lot like the normal collection operations that we do. That's because they are. Find cats, plural. That's just like when we type. Let me actually get a notepad open here. In previous videos, if we had a cats collection and we said cats.find, that returns every cat document. If we say cats.findOne, that returns one cat document. If we say, insert cat, cats.insert, like this is where like we would add a new cat, right? So these HTML files are named the same way. So they're exactly what you might think they are. So you can go ahead and open some of them. So if you open, so like insert cat, you'll notice here we just have our quick form where we're pulling in our cat. Or from there we have a find one cat, which is just a template that has everything relating to showing one cat in it. We might have find cats plural, and that's that kind of pagination code to show a list of cats, and that does our infinite scroll. So I've tried to give you these templates right out of the box. Cat in find list. This describes, this code right here. This describes what one of these elements looks like in the list. So if I go change this, or let's just say like, hello there. Now you'll notice that each of these items in this list has that text hello there on there. So this template, cat in find list, right? This is the find list, just like if you were saying cats.find, give me all the cats, right? So it's the UI for the, give me all the documents query, basically. So when we say cat in find list, we're describing what one of these things looks like within this list. Now that's not to be confused with find one cat. Find one cat is what we see when we click on one of those documents, right? So that's like the find one document page. We're looking at that one document, and this is where you would change the HTML to just show the attributes off the document, right? You can see right here that's exactly what we're doing. It's like this dot title, this dot body, this dot created on, right? And those are just the that's actually wrong. That should be created at. But it's pretty much just pulling the attributes off the current document we're looking at, and it's displaying them into the UI. I guess it doesn't want to show that either, probably because it's a protected field, so we'll just delete that. Sorry, so if you were confused about what just happened, I just deleted the created at field on the cats because basically it just shouldn't have been in there, and there's still some kinks with this boilerplate that I haven't cleaned up yet. From there, so each of these different HTML templates is one building block in your collection arsenal, right? In a previous video I said, well, these are the things you do with collections. You can remove them, update them, insert them, or show them, right? You can show one of them, or you can show a list of them. There's kind of those 5 things to do. So these are those building blocks. Do you want to show a list of documents? Do you want to show a single document? Do you want to edit a document? Do you want to create a new document? This is where those templates live. Now, the way to think about these templates is that they are building blocks for whatever it is that you are trying to make. So these templates inside the collection folder, they are not pages, right? Let me repeat that one more time. They are not pages, meaning these templates are building blocks that we will include across the various pages of our application. So right now, I want you to create this distinction in your mind. You have collections. You have these collection templates that are reusable chunks that we can throw all over our app. And then we have pages, which are top-level containers in our application that have a unique URL structure, right? They are 2 separate concepts. If you change something inside the collections folder, it changes it everywhere. If you change something inside a page folder, it should only adjust the functionality on that one page. If this is confusing you, it's time to, hail Wesley or talk to another student. But this is a really important idea, that you have you have collection stuff which is reused in multiple places across the app, and then you have page level stuff which only exists in the context of that page. So, to illustrate that concept, go to your Pages folder now on the left. And if you open up this folder, you'll notice, so real quick, a little bit of kind of an unfortunate structural decision, but it had to happen. Notice this folder is called Cat Collection Pages. I say pages, plural. It's a folder that has folders in it, meaning it's a folder of pages, right? Just how homepage and login page and those things, all got their own folders. The Cat Collection Pages, each one of the different pages that it has its own folder as well. However, we put them inside of this Cat Collection folder under Pages just so we can keep similar functionality grouped together. Because it's going to get messy really fast when we start to have multiple collections going simultaneously, and then all of the collection pages are just sort of scattered haphazardly across the Pages folder. It's going to start to cause stress. So if you have a unique standalone page, like the home page or the login page, just put that in the top level of the Pages folder. If they're pages that are relating to collection functionality, I like to put them under this, that folder to group them all together. Here's the truth about this, guys. You can really structure these folders however you want. Now, I'm not saying you should do that, but you totally can. So if for some reason you have a collection of 4 pages, I'm not going to use the word collection. That's confusing. We have a grouping of 4 pages in our app, such as the About Us page or the FAQs page. And you decide that you don't want to put them all at the top level of this Pages folder, you can create another subfolder and group them together. That's not going to really break any functionality or anything like that. My suggestion is just that once you start to drill down into it, one page has its own folder with its own HTML file and its own JavaScript file. That would be my suggestion. So once you actually do get down to the page, it's got a folder, and then it's got an HTML file and a JavaScript file, right? So maybe you might start to have some fancy folder structure down the road to kind of group your pages together so you can stay sane. But at the end of the day, this is what each of the page folders should look like. So again, we're kind of getting we're kind of going off into this world of how is all this stuff getting glued together and there's so many files and folders, right? Just try to, keep in mind that, the Pages folder is exactly what it sounds like, right? It's got these folders in it that just have the relevant code to create your different pages on your app. So, diving into this collection Pages folder right here, you'll notice there are 4 pages that we've created relative to our collection. We have a create page, an edit page, a list page, and a view one cat page, right? Now, let's take a look at something that's a bit odd here. So if we go look at our collections again and look at the templates for the cats, with our cats, it's called cat in find list, find cats, find one cat, insert cat, update cat. What I mean by that is all the vocabulary is using the normal collection vocabulary. So the normal collection actions, update, insert, find. Now, though, when we get to the pages where we're showing that stuff, it's called create, edit, list, view. Now, why is it like that? That seems like unnecessary complexity, having it named two different things. Shouldn't we just name it the same thing everywhere and have it be really consistent? No, and I'll tell you why. So with these, find one cat, those sort of database style queries, they pretty much are, they are never going to be seen by the user. They're only going to be seen by you, the program creator, right? So you should name them something that is consistent and makes sense with whatever action you're trying to do, right? Like it's easier to think about these things as insert cat. Oh, of course. That's the template that has the form on it for when they are putting a new cat in the collection. That makes complete sense. But here, in these collection pages folder, that stuff is seen by the user. And so we need to use a vocabulary that makes sense to our user, but might be less clear from a programming perspective. For example, the user doesn't know what insert means. Insert in what? They don't know what find is. What are we trying to find? Update. Well, that one probably makes the most sense. The terms that users are familiar with is create. We're going to create a new thing. Oh, okay. Edit. We're changing something we've already made. List. Oh, we're looking at a list of these items that we can scroll through. Or view. Oh, we're looking at one of those things that we made. Right? So that's why there's the distinction between these two. And you should start to kind of create that mapping in your mind. Map that, when I say insert, the user is going to think about create. When I say update, the user is going to see edit. When I say find, the user is going to think list, right? And if we drill down into this, if you look at, say, like the create cat page. Oh, sorry, let's go to the HTML file. You'll notice in here, I am just yielding in the insert cat template. So from our collections folder, where we have our quick form, I create a template called insert cat. Now notice how this template's pretty sparse. It's just the form. It doesn't have any container classes, doesn't have any column classes. All that stuff is stuff that should happen at the page level, right? The collection folder only has things that are shared everywhere. So saying when we're in a container and if we're in like a column MD6, all that is going to happen at the page level. That doesn't happen inside the collections folder. So now if we look at the page, sure enough, there's where we're doing the other stuff. That's where this is the create cat page that we're on, and we have a container and a row and a full width layout. And then we just yield in the insert cat template. Now there might be multiple pages across our app where we end up wanting to yield in the insert cat template. That's totally possible. And that's why we have this structure, because the base templates for doing different operations on this collection need to be easy to reuse across the different pages in our app. So whenever you're adding these features, you should think, okay, is this something that's happening everywhere across our whole app? Yes. Well, in that case, it should probably happen inside the collections folder. If it's happening at the page level, this is something, on this page, I want it to have a 50-50 layout. That's probably page level functionality. So what I've done with this collection generator is I've created the foundation for a basic mapping between these two different concepts. I've created your reusable collection code, and then I've gotten you started on a list of collection pages, right, that are going to pull in those templates and use them in different ways. So if we go back to our app, those pages are what define this piece of our app. Going in, being able to edit stuff, being able to delete things, doing that kind of functionality is defined across those 4 different pages. So there's a lot that's going on here. This is complicated. We're building out a collection within these reusable modular components, and we're also creating pages that pull those components in. Another metaphor you could use to think about this is think about your app like you're building a new Lego construction. You can have all these little smaller chunks of Legos that you've made that you can reuse and strap across your airplane, for example. Right? So we've got like a little block, like a little Lego block for engines, and a little Lego block for like wheels, and a little Lego block for windows, right? And we can take all those little Lego blocks, and then we can put them together across the different places on our Lego construction. And that's what makes the whole thing. So the best thing that you can do to get better at Meteor and understand how to build your app well is to completely understand what this generator just did. It's to go through every one of these templates and every one of these code files in the collections folder as well as in the pages folder. And if you can understand all the different pieces and how they're connecting and attaching to one another, then you will have a really good fundamental understanding of how to put together your application.